Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. This is Chamber Chats. I am the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and we are broadcasting, as always, from the podcasting studios here at the Czech Media Group. I would like to acknowledge, as always, that I live and work in the ancestral lands of the Lekwungen-speaking nations known to us as Songhees and Esquimalt. And Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who have a team of experts with solutions as unique as your business. Unless you are an Indigenous person, you at some point, or some of your relatives or your ancestors, came to Canada as immigrants. They came here perhaps as refugees, but we are a country full of people who came from somewhere else when Canada was colonized. The process of doing that is something that maybe you know from your own process, or friends and family, co-workers that have gone through the process of immigrating to Canada. We want to talk about that today because at the Chamber, as you know, we advocate very strongly about the fact that immigration is the key to increasing our population and our workforce, because Canadians themselves are not creating themselves at a pace that's going to keep up with the demand. We want to talk about that process with a couple of people who are in the immigration business. One of them is Luciane Luthi, who is with Luciane Immigration. Good day to you. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself, Bruce?
Good, thank you. And actually, we're going to chat with you. You are an immigrant to Canada, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Our other guest today is Chris Brown, who's with Tudor House Immigration Services. Chris, how are you today?
Hi, Bruce. I'm doing good, thank you.
Great. Okay, Chris, be right back to you. Luciane, let's talk about your situation. First of all, you were an immigrant to Canada from Brazil. So we will put that in perspective. But first of all, when somebody says to you, what do you do? What's your job? What's your business? How do you describe that?
I bring people and give the opportunity for them to have a life change and in their career, in their family, their personal now beliefs as well. So, and that's also the purpose that I help people to become better and have a better life. So Canada is one of the top 5 countries in the world to live. So I want people come here and provide to the country and also have an opportunity to grow here as well.
Great. Okay. Chris, tell me about your path to end up doing what you're doing.
I originally started in teaching. I've been a high school teacher for 15 years, and I enjoy working with people. Immigration consulting is a lot about working with people and understanding their stories and being part of their journey. So in a nutshell, I basically navigate their journey to Canada and secure their future in Canada by way of permanent residency or citizenship.
So, Luciane, you went through you immigrated here. How was that for you? Did you learn from that? And was that part of your decision to do what you do now?
Yes, this was definitely a learning opportunity. I came actually as an exchange student back in 2004. I did not have any plans to actually immigrate to Canada, but to me, I always describe as to everyone, it was if I had a black and white TV, and when I came here, everything became colorful. So, and then I started learning the immigration journey. I immigrated back then was much easier than nowadays. The programs were not as diverse and competitive. And then after 1 year, I applied from overseas. It was very quick. It only took me 9 months to come back to Canada. And then during my journey, during these 20 years, I helped a lot of people to move and through their process as well. And also that's one of the reasons why I wanted to become an expert and say, okay, I know I have the know-how. Now I have to be qualified to do that. And I also had the opportunity to work for the government in the healthcare field, where I did do a lot of international recruitment, and I knew how I was also helping to help the community as well, because we're bringing foreign workers who are healthcare practitioners or healthcare professionals. And I know that was helping a lot of the island, and I wanted to know the other side. So that's how I decided. Actually, was in the beginning of the pandemic that I decided to study it and become licensed. And for me, the pandemic was good in a sense that I had the time to study and work at the same time to provide to my family, and become a license. And then I became a license within 1 year, and already had clients already interested. And then I just let it go of that opportunity that I had at the company, and just decided to move on with my own business. And it's been a lot of a lot of fun so far.
Cool. Chris, that must sound familiar. Tell me about the clients that you work with and their whole process.
Oh boy, I work with a lot of people, Bruce. Um, there's our immigration system is not just one, stream or pathway or process, as you well know. I mean, there's 900,000 temporary residents in Canada right now, and all these temporary residents are seeking pathways to permanent residency. And then there's spouses of these people, and there's kids, and things that are their families as well. So there's the internal aspects of immigration in Canada that we're dealing with, and I would say 50% of my job is transitioning temporary residents to permanent residents that are already in Canada, students, post-grad work permit holders, workers that are working for companies. Um, and then the other half would be incoming, so this would be categorized, generally speaking, as people that want to immigrate to Canada. And the demand for Canada is high, which has resulted in, our provinces and our federal programs being more competitive. And as, Luciane has mentioned, the pathways are very much different now than they were, 10 years ago. Even for very skilled people that have very good employment situations, depending on where they are, they can be very, either competitive or very, hard to get to pathways. So understanding that process, for one, is large part of my job, is explaining that process to people, and then also finding them a pathway that would work for them. And a large amount of my business comes from the UK, where I basically can have an overview conversation with a client before they even come to Canada, so we can take advantage of all the different pathways and strategic initiatives that Canada offers provincially and federally to ensure that the goal is in mind, which would be permanent residency at the end of the journey.
Yeah, Luciane mentioned the pandemic. How did that affect you?
Um, I really kind of started my business during the pandemic. I became licensed in 2018, and then my first real year of operations was 2019. And I mean, I live in a small town in Cobble Hill on Vancouver Island. There's not like a market of people I can just go see and get clients from. So I had to develop my business online, and my market is online. And because of that, COVID actually helped me, the pandemic, because people in that process trusted the online system more and more. Even people that would never seek services online have learned to trust and to engage with people, professionals like myself, online. And also at the same time, there was a bunch of technologies that were becoming available and people became used to. Like, one of them was this one we're using right now, Zoom. And this is a huge tool for any immigration consultant, because it's a way that we can connect with our clients in any part of the world. So compound that with all the other tools that are available online, and you actually can start a business, and a successful one, during a pandemic. And the pandemic, although it restricted our immigration system, it actually increased the demand for immigration consultants, because in a restrictive environment, you have to be more strategic in terms of how you navigate the system. So all in all, it was personally a great experience for me to develop a business in a time when the world was changing from more of an in-person to an online market.
Yeah, man, it sure was. So we're dealing with other countries around the world and people who want to come to this great country to live. It's a different process depending on the country of origin, I would imagine. I want to talk about that next. We're talking immigration today on Chamber Chats with a couple of people who are experts in that field. Luciane Luthi is with Luciane Immigration, and Chris Brown is with Tudor House Immigration Services. Luciane, tell me about working with different countries. Are there countries that are easier to process with, if you will, or work with than others?
Yes, because Canada has agreements between other countries. The majority of the agreements are within Europe, some in Asia, and also with South America. All the immigration consultants, they usually choose a niche, okay, for their business. My business is actually with the Latin America, so most of my clients come from South America, Mexico as well, and in US. So I work a lot of it with the Canada, US, and Mexico agreement. Canada also has agreements with Colombia, Chile. But talking about the agreements, yes, will be easier for a country if they have an agreement with Canada. If they don't, then we have a little limitation in how we can bring them.
Okay, Chris, how does that differ from province to province? Is there a provincial process involved on top of the federal process?
Yeah, as Luciane was mentioning, like you can categorize, our relationship with international countries, either broadly speaking, by way of like, do we allow them to come to Canada easily, or do we require them to get visas? And a lot of countries, we have basically, no restrictions on how they can come. They can just arrive with a passport. If you're a US citizen, you don't need to get a visa to enter Canada. You just arrive. Well, the same is true for UK, Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand. The list is pretty extensive. Mexico, even. But for the countries that don't, now there's a visa process in place. And so the same is sort of true with provinces. Provinces have their own immigration schemes, to basically suit their needs. So in the Yukon, it's a very much different economic environment than it would be in Alberta or BC. So the federal government allows these provinces to basically come up with their own requirements, and they say, okay, well, if you meet these requirements, then we will support you for permanent residency in Canada. These programs are called provincial nominee programs, or PNPs, and they're becoming more and more popular, Bruce, to the point now where if you don't have a support of a PNP in some provinces, then you will not get permanent residence if you're going through economic immigration. I can look at Ontario, for example, as a good example of that. Our federal system is becoming so competitive and so kind of unreachable to most applicants that they need to increase their profiles by getting the support from these PNP programs. In BC, we've got a very successful PNP program that has been sort of a model for other PNPs for many years. It targets tech and healthcare workers. It targets postgraduate international students who have master's and science degrees and PhDs, but also just targets, for example, entry-level semi-skilled workers that are in hospitality industries, like hotel staff and bartending, restaurants, things like that, and also early childhood education, very much in need for these types of people to be in our economies. So all in all, like the provinces have more and more control over who they're selecting and who they're bringing in. And this is a very important part of the pathway for an immigration journey. So we're talking about starting from the beginning of when you're coming to Canada and all the way through to permanent residency. You certainly want to look at the province in terms of where you're planning on settling, because that could be the key to your pathway to permanent residency.
Okay, and Luciane, what's the factor if you already have family here? If someone's coming, for example, you came from Brazil, if you already had family in Canada, would that expedite the process at all?
That doesn't expedite the process, but it can give you points. So, for example, the federal system, the express entry system, and the provincial nominees, they will give you points if you have family here who are PRs or citizens. So that can help you, because everything is a competition and you participate in a lottery. Pretty much that's how it happens. It's based on points. So, but expedite, no, it will not expedite, because you have someone here, unless if you're just coming, for example, your spouse is a worker here and they want to join their family, and the other spouse who is back home wants to apply for a work permit, then they will try to do within the 30 days. They have an expedite process for that, but that's for the temporary work permit per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sort of related to that, Luciane, how often do you speak with someone who's coming here with the express purpose of either buying or starting a business? Does that happen often?
Not really. Again, talking about niche
Yeah.
in the business, my business is more within the provincial nominees, the LMIAs, employer hiring program, as well as family sponsorship. So in our business as well, how we get these clients by recommendation. So someone that already helped in the past will refer me to someone else. So unless if you don't advertise much, you're gonna be within this realm of process that you usually do, unless if you wanna go start anew and in a new area. So to me, no, not a lot of people come to me for the business.
No. Okay. We have heard the term visa. We think we know what a visa is, but do you know what a super visa is? We're going to talk about that next. We're talking immigration today on Chamber Chats with a couple of experts in the field. Luciane Luthi is with a company called Luciane Immigration, and Chris Brown is with Tudor House Immigration Services. So, Chris, what's a super visa? We're not talking a credit card here, but what is a super visa?
Well, a super visa is basically a visa that allows a parent or a grandparent to come to Canada for 5 years at a time. This is a lot different than the 6 months that you're normally allowed to stay on a visa. And they're given to parents and grandparents specifically because often these people are unable to carve out permanent resident pathways. So although our laws allow for sponsorship of parents and grandparents, the actual implementation of this program is limited and usually based on a lottery system of, say 20,000 per every 500,000 people that want to be included in the program. So instead of just opening the doors and allowing, 500,000 parents and grandparents to come flood in our healthcare system, they have created the Super Visa program, which basically allows your parent and grandparent to come here for 5 years at a time and basically live with you if you want them to. And the only caveat there is that they have to be covered under their own private health insurance. So the government's not basically paying up for healthcare services for these people. And obviously, on a super visa, it doesn't allow you to work or study. But normally, these people don't want to work or study anyhow.
Yeah. Are there circumstances where, for example, the family already in Canada have to, for lack of a better term, post a bond or prove their net worth so that they can cover any medical expenses? Does that ever happen?
Well, first of all, there has to be a relationship between the grandparent and the parent to the person who is considered the permanent resident or the citizen. So if we're talking about like a family member, then that person has to be eligible to have their parents apply for super visas. To be eligible, you have to be a permanent resident and you have to show that you filed taxes in the last 3 years in Canada. And you also have to show that there is enough income to support not only yourself and your family, but also your parent and grandparent that you're inviting over. So the government's put out basically a scale of income. They call it the LICO scale, and it's basically that number plus an additional 30% that you have to show because it's your grandparent or parent who won't be working. So, I mean, it's not astronomical amounts, for a family of, 4 plus 1 grandparent, you might have to show around 75 to 85,000. I don't want you quote me on that. I mean, that's just off the top of my head, right?
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so Luciane, when someone, for example, like you decides that they have come here, they've settled, what's now the pathway to citizenship for someone who is a recent immigrant?
The pathway to citizenship, well, let's say one person come here as a worker or a student, they have to first become eligible to a permanent residency program, which can take anywhere from 8 months to 2 years for approval. Once a person becomes a permanent resident, then they will have to stay for 3 years within the last 5 years for the whole continuous 3 years within the last 5 years in order to be able to apply for citizenship. So it takes around 5 to 6 years to be able to become a citizen because they cannot leave the country and stay back home because if they don't meet the eligibility requirements, which is 730 days every 5 years, they will not be able to apply for citizenship.
I have to say that one of my favorite Canadian experiences, and you usually see it on Canada Day, is when they show people being sworn in. A room full of people that have come from other countries and made Canada their home. I find that very emotional. I really do. What does this cost, Chris, when somebody's deciding, I mean, not your fees or anything, but what does it cost for someone to immigrate to Canada?
Well, it depends on how you mean immigrate. A lot of people would consider studying in Canada or working in Canada part of the immigration process. And then you look at permanent residency is obviously part, and then is citizenship included as well. So, we've all read online and heard stories of, how people might be spending a lot of money to be in Canada, as international students, for example, workers. But if you're looking at the government fees alone, then, it's quite, manageable. Work permit applications range, $100, $150. Permanent residency application for express entry would be approximately $1,200. Citizenship applications are $630. But the real fees would come into place when you're, obviously hiring representation, like myself or Luciane, or if you are engaged in study, because this is part of your pathway, then obviously you're subject to international student fees, which are, astronomical, as we know.
Yeah. What about going the other way around, Luciane? If I wanted to immigrate and live in Tuscany in northern Italy, do you do that sort of service as well? Or are you just doing people coming into Canada?
Only people coming to Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do people access your service?
Usually a lot Latinos like WhatsApp.
Okay.
So we talk a lot through WhatsApp or Facebook or social media. And the referrals usually come. I usually don't do marketing. I only marketing my Instagram account, but people can connect with me very quick to talk to them and provide the customer service and actually meet them in real life or even in person, so I can learn about their background and then make up a strategy for them to come. Yes.
Okay. Chris, how do people find you?
Similar to Luciane, there's mainly on digital media, Google searches. My process is quite simple. Basically, I like to talk to you over the phone first to hear about your case and learn if I can help you. And if I can, I will let you know how that works and what the process looks like and everything. And then from there, we basically engage and begin work on the file. I've like I said, I live in the middle of a rural area on Vancouver Island, so most of my clients I don't ever meet in person, and I've got to know them just by over the phone and also through Zoom and things like this. But if you Google search for immigration consultant in Victoria, you'll find me there. If you Google search for immigration consultant Vancouver, you'll find me there. And Tudor House Immigration Services, you'll find us there too.
Okay. And if you want to, you can find both of these folks on the Chamber website too, which is victoriachamber.ca, because they are members of our Chamber. Luciane is at applycanadaimmigration.com. Chris is at tudorhouseconsulting.com. Thank you both for all you do. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very
Good to
much.
meet you.
And that's it for this one. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.